Following World War II, there were a series of high-profile trials which aimed to bring the major war criminals of the conflict to justice. The Nuremberg Trials occurred, in which many remaining high-ranking Nazis, such as Hermann Göring, Rudolf Hess and Joachim von Ribbentrop, were tried and accused of many crimes, including waging wars of aggression and crimes against humanity. As the Allies and the Red Army rampaged across Nazi-occupied territory, forcing the Germans back towards their homeland, they came across the true horrors of the Third Reich. Dozens of concentration camps were discovered, which shocked the liberators. The evils of the Holocaust had occurred within the barbed wire and electric fences, and it was clear that someone needed to pay for the crimes of the extermination of the Jews. Those who were placed on trial at Nuremberg had roles in the Holocaust or the Second World War, but one man who was instrumental in both was Ernst Kaltenbrunner. Kaltenbrunner eventually became the chief of the Reich Security Main Office, overseeing the offices of the Kripo, SD and Gestapo. However, after World War II, he was executed for his crimes. So join us today as we look at the justified execution of Ernst Kaltenbrunner, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Ernst Kaltenbrunner was born in Austria on the 4th of October 1903. He was part of a rather well-to-do family, with his father being a lawyer, and he was educated in Linz, where Adolf Hitler lived during his childhood. He was childhood friends with another man who would become an infamous Nazi, Adolf Eichmann, who was instrumental in implementing the final solution. Kaltenbrunner then obtained the law degree and began working in a law firm before opening his own office. He later married and had 3 children. However, on the 18th of October 1930, he joined the Nazi Party. Despite living in Austria, he joined the German Party, which would later become banned in Austria. He became a district speaker for the party and later joined the SS in late August 1931. By 1933, he was the head of the National Socialist Lawyers' League in Linz, a group of pro-Nazi lawyers who would regularly meet. Kaltenbrunner was arrested for conspiracy to overthrow the Austrian government and was held in a detention camp, however led a hunger strike which forced his and almost 500 other party members to be released. He was later then jailed for high treason, but the charge was dropped again, but with this charge he was banned from practicing law. He rose throughout the SS ranks and was considered a leader of the Austrian SS. He repeatedly travelled to meet with other high-ranking SS members, such as Heinrich Himmler and Reinhard Heydrich, but was arrested again in 1937. In March 1938, Hitler's Nazi Germany annexed Austria into its empire and Reich, and Kaltenbrunner helped with this coup, and for this was given a role as the State Secretary for Public Security in the new government, which was controlled by Himmler. Further promotions came for him, and he helped to open up and establish Mauthausen concentration camp, the first Nazi concentration camp in Austria, and he later also became a high SS and police leader for the main SS command centre in Austria. As the Second World War broke out, he continued his work within the SS. He was placed into the Reserve Waffen-SS and began to utilise for the war effort the large intelligence network he set up in Austria during his time there. This impressed Himmler, who appointed him the chief of the Reich Security Main Office. In this role he oversaw the Gestapo, Kripo and SD, replacing the assassinated Reinhard Heydrich, and Kaltenbrunner remained in this job until the end of the conflict. He was a devoted anti-Semite and was present at a meeting in December 1940 when it was decided that all Jews who were incapable of working were to be killed and gassed. It was with Kaltenbrunner's leadership of the RSHA that the pace of the Holocaust was picked up and the extermination of the Jews was accelerated. Deportations to concentration camps were also hastened, and it was said that he wished all Jews in the Reich and the occupied countries to be liquidated. He also showed his barbarism when he pushed for a law stating that all homosexuals would be forced to undergo compulsory castration. Whilst inspecting Mauthausen in 1943, he took great interest in watching demonstrations of different methods of killing, gunshot, hanging, gassing, and 15 prisoners were selected to be killed purely to demonstrate to Kaltenbrunner. He also forced Auschwitz to take more prisoners and subsequently gassed thousands of them as soon as they got to the camp. During a meeting with a Hungarian official, it was decided that 750,000 of Hungary's Jews would be taken straight to the concentration camps and killed. Kaltenbrunner himself was a very scary man, and it was even rumoured that Heinrich Himmler was frightened of him due to his tall height, facial scars, and horrific temper. He carried out the later investigations of the July 20th plot, and it's estimated that 5,000 people were executed for the failed attempted bombing of Hitler inside the Wolf's Lair, with thousands more being deported to concentration camps. He was a virulent anti-Semite and someone who was incredibly loyal to Hitler, and he was fanatical about his Führer. As the Second World War continued throughout its final years, more celebration and accolades were placed onto Kaltenbrunner for his work. However, by 1944, it was clear that the war was only going one way for Nazi Germany, heading towards a defeat. With the Red Army closing in on the Germans, Ernst Kaltenbrunner ordered that all of the prisoners inside concentration camps were to be killed, and he had briefly been placed in charge of the remaining German forces in southern Europe by Himmler in April 1945. As Hitler made his final trip out of the Führer bunker in Berlin, Kaltenbrunner was there that day. However, he quickly realised Hitler was planning to die in his bunker, and because of this he fled Berlin. On the 12th of May 1945, he was captured along with some SS guards in a cabin at the top of a mountain in Austria by American soldiers. Information had been obtained about their hideout, and they went to some extreme lengths to hide out. The US soldiers, after hearing the intelligence about Kaltenbrunner's whereabouts, decided to climb up the icy and glacial rock terrain for 6 hours in the complete dark, a rather dangerous feat, to try and apprehend the leader of the RSHA. At the cabin there was a short standoff, but all 4 Nazis were captured without a shot being fired, and upon his arrest Kaltenbrunner claimed he was a doctor and he gave a fake name. However, as he arrived off the mountain and into the local town, his mistress spotted him and called out to him, giving him a hug, and this left to Kaltenbrunner's positive identification. Following his arrest, he was then taken to the Nuremberg Trials, where he was charged with conspiracy to commit crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. During the beginning of the trial, he was actually absent from proceedings and suffering from 2 subarachnoid hemorrhages, and it took a few weeks to recover. Kaltenbrunner's lawyers did try to get him a pardon due to ill health, but this was refused, and upon his release he was taken straight back to the trial. During his time in Nuremberg, he claimed everything he had done was rubber-stamped and approved by his assistants, and that his signature had been counterfeited by Gestapo chief Heinrich Himmler, and he claimed that he did not have any understanding or knowledge of the final solution. He claimed as the head of the RSHA, he was only involved in acts of espionage and intelligence, which were not in fact war crimes. He passed the blame also onto Heinrich Himmler, who had taken his own life, saying he was his superior, and that he even protested against the ill treatment of the Jews to Himmler and Hitler. Expressing complete denial, he was eventually found out, as there was clear documentational evidence about his visit to Mauthausen, and he even claimed that he had tried to end the final solution. It was clear he was talking nonsense, and for his crimes he was sentenced to death, being found guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Kaltenbrunner was to be hanged, and spent the last few weeks of his life in prison at Nuremberg. A gallows had been created in the gymnasium of Nuremberg prison, and on the 16th of October the condemned men were executed. There were a number sentenced to death at Nuremberg, the most high profile being Hermann Goering, who actually took his own life prior to the hangman doing it for him. The first to be executed by the infamous US executioner John C. Woods was Joachim von Ribbentrop. Woods' methods of executing the condemned that day have been called into question, especially as a number of those war criminals took a long time to die, one taking 28 minutes, and also the executions were not clean. Many of the condemned were hit on the head by the trapdoor on the way down, and today Woods remains a divisive executioner. After Wilhelm Keitel's execution, Ernst Kaltenbrunner was taken into the execution chamber at 1:52 a.m. He shuffled into the room accompanied by 2 guards, and was led up the steps of the gallows. As he arrived at the trapdoors, the executioner asked him for any final words. Kaltenbrunner stated, "I have loved my German people and fatherland with a warm heart. I have done my duty by the laws of my people, and I am sorry my people were led this time by men who were not soldiers, and that crimes were committed of which I had no knowledge." Even as he was about to die, Kaltenbrunner still maintained his innocence. The hood was then placed over his head, and with his final words he wished Germany luck. His execution was one of the swifter to have taken place that morning, and there were only around 7 minutes from the time he was executed and pronounced dead till the next condemned man, Alfred Rosenberg, plunged to his death. Overall, Ernst Kaltenbrunner was a man who was instrumental in the evils of the Third Reich and was key to the horrific suffering of many inside the concentration camps and prisons that the Nazis presided over. He was incredibly high up within the Nazi Party and had the personal respect of Adolf Hitler, and his work presiding over the Gestapo, SD and Kripo was instrumental in Hitler and Himmler implementing their police state. It's important to understand that he was a man who was clearly anti-Semitic, and he was definitely one of the worst villains of the Second World War. Ultimately, he was a man who wanted the Holocaust to be sped up with ruthless efficiency, and for this, at the end of the conflict, he would pay the ultimate price himself. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.